All right, so you want to try and make sense of what just happened over in Germany?
Yeah.
Buckle up, because we've got a whole bunch of articles here, and let me tell you, things are messy.
Yeah, this German election, it's got everyone kind of scratching their heads.
I mean, on the surface,
Mhm.
looks like the conservative guy, Friedrich Merz, he like swept in and won the whole thing. But when you look closer,
It's not quite the victory lap he might have hoped for, huh?
no, not at all. It's more like, okay, you technically won, but now you got to put together this puzzle of a government.
Right, by Easter no less, which is, well, that's not a lot of time.
Not when you're dealing with a political scene that's basically splintered into a million pieces.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the far right making serious gains.
Which, yeah, can't ignore that. We'll definitely dig into that.
Economy's in a slump. People are frustrated. Like, I don't know if anyone's really celebrating in Germany right now. More like everyone's kind of holding their breath.
Yeah, good way to put it. Like, okay, what now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do in this deep dive. We're going to go beyond the headlines, use these articles we've got to try and really understand what led to this point, and maybe, just maybe, get a glimpse of where Germany goes from here. Sound good?
Sounds good to me. Let's dive in.
Okay, so let's start with Mr. Winner, Friedrich Merz.
Right, Mr. Winner. Well, like we said, calling it a clear win is
It's generous.
very generous, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, he came out on top, but look, even if he manages to pull together a coalition, and that's a big if, right? He's going to be leading a country that's deeply divided. And on top of that, he's got this ticking clock, this deadline to get a government up and running by Easter.
Which is, like we said, not a lot of time to wrangle all those different parties with their own agendas.
It's like herding cats, and not just any cats, like cats that really don't like each other.
Yeah, okay, I could picture that. And if you can't pull it off, what happens then?
Oh, then it's back to the drawing board. Another snap election, more instability. Germany's kind of stuck in this loop of uncertainty. Businesses don't know what to expect. People are anxious. It's not a good situation.
Okay, so not exactly a smooth transition of power then. But speaking of power, let's talk about the guy who just lost it, Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
Yeah, Schultz, not a good night for him or his party, the Social Democrats.
Understatement of the century. I mean, last I checked, they came third. Third. Their worst showing, like, ever.
Since World War II, yeah. It's pretty historic, and not in a good way. I mean, you look at Schultz's face after the results came in, and you can see it's like he's aged 10 years in a night.
Yeah, I saw his concession speech. It was pretty somber, almost like, I don't know, an admission that they messed up big time.
That they lost touch with what people want, what they need.
Okay, but before we get to why Scholz and his party tanked, we got to talk about the elephant in the room, right? The AfD, the alternative for Germany.
Yeah, can't ignore that. That's the far-right party, and seeing them surge ahead like this, it's,
More than a little unsettling.
yeah. It brings up some really uncomfortable echoes of Germany's past. You know, we don't need to spell it out, but it's there, this shadow hanging over everything.
It's a reminder that we can't just assume things like that are gone for good. And that takes us back to, like, how did Germany even get to this point? Why was there a snap election in the first place?
Well, to put it simply, Schultz's coalition, it kind of fell apart, like a house of cards in a stiff breeze.
7 months ahead of schedule. What went that wrong that they couldn't even hold on for the rest of their term?
Basically, it was 3 years of constant bickering, infighting, and policies that just weren't landing well with the public. You had these different parties all crammed together in this coalition, each pulling in a different direction. It was unsustainable.
Like a car with 4 drivers all trying to steer at the same time. No wonder they crashed.
Exactly. And all this political drama, it just added to this sense of, I don't know, disillusionment. Like people were already fed up with the government, and then this happens.
It's like, come on, can't you guys at least pretend to have it together?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got this backdrop of instability, people are feeling frustrated, and then you add in the actual issues that dominated this election. What are the big ones?
Well, from what I've read, it seems like the economy and immigration were the two hot-button topics that really got people fired up.
Okay, let's start with the economy. How bad are things for everyday Germans?
Well, Germany is still a major economic force, but things have definitely been slowing down. There's this feeling of stagnation, like the good times might be over. One article I read, they actually said it was like trying to drive a Volkswagen with the handbrake on.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Like you're trying to move forward, but something's holding you back.
Yeah, and that feeling of being stuck, it's not a good feeling, especially when you're used to things being pretty good.
So people are looking for someone to blame, someone to fix it.
Exactly. And that's where someone like Mer'z comes in, promising change. Now, whether he can actually deliver is another story, but...
Right, right. Okay, so economy's a mess. What about immigration? How did that factor into the election?
Oh, that was a big one. A really divisive issue. You had Mer'z taking this hard line, promising to crack down on immigration, make it much harder for people to come into Germany.
Which probably appealed to some voters, the ones who were worried about jobs, resources, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. But on the other hand, you have a lot of people who see immigration as like a necessity. Germany's got an aging population. They need workers,
Yeah.
and they see diversity as a good thing. So, yeah, immigration, it really cut the country down the middle.
It's interesting how all this internal stuff, it's happening against this backdrop of global uncertainty, right? You've got the war in Ukraine still raging on, and Europe's relationship with the U.S., it's complicated.
Yeah, it's all connected. You can't just look at Germany in isolation. All these external pressures, they're shaping how people vote, how they see the future.
Okay, so let's try to tie this all together. What are the big takeaways, the things people should keep in mind when they think about this German election?
Well, I think the main thing is that Germany is at a crossroads. They're
Yeah.
facing this trifecta of challenges: a shaky economy, a fractured political system, and the rise of the far right. And these issues, they're all feeding into each other, making things even more complex.
Yeah, it's not a simple situation, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we let everyone go about their day?
Well, I think the big question now is, what does this mean for Germany's place in the world? This rise of the AfD, it raises concerns about Germany turning inward, becoming more nationalistic, and that could have big implications for their role in Europe, their relationship with the U.S., everything. It's something we need to watch very closely.
Yeah, definitely a lot to think about. Thanks for diving in with me and breaking all this down. It's been a wild ride, but hey, that's German politics for you.
It always keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
To all our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon to deep dive into another corner of the world. Until then.